was broadcasting folk legend Arlo Guthrie's song, Alice's Restaurant. This is a clip of a recreation of that moment.
I wanted to feel like the all-American kid. I walked in, I was hung down, brung down, swung down, hung up. I walked in and sat down and give me a piece of paper, said, kid, see the psychiatrist, room 604. I walked up there, I said, shrink, I want to kill. I mean, I want to.
Well, when I first heard that Pacifica had been bombed off the air, it was like shock. I couldn't imagine that anybody would want to really, do something like that.
It was a very professional job. They knew what to do, they knew where to find you, and they did it.
An excerpt of recreation of what happened in 1970 when KPFT first went on the air. The only radio station in the country to be blown up, in fact, blown up twice by the Klan. Well, we're now joined from Houston, Texas, by KPFT station manager Dwayne Bradley. We're also joined by Mary Thomas. She's the host of the weekly Zydeco music program on KPFT. The bullet that was fired into the station Monday morning narrowly missed her head. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Mary, let's begin with you. Explain exactly what was happening. It was 1 o'clock on Monday morning?
Yes.
And where were you in the station?
I was at the board doing the music.
And then what happened?
And, well, somebody, I could see somebody from the inside camera knocking on the door, so John R., the person that was helping me, he went to the door to see who it was, and I told him, I said, if you don't know who it is, don't let him in. But anyway, when he got to the door, he found out that it was somebody that we knew that comes to the station. And while he was doing this, then a big boom came through the window right where I had just moved my chair from that window. And I fell to the floor because I turned my head right quick, but then I saw the big hole, and I just fell to the floor and crawled into the next room, and made a phone call to 911.
Dwayne Bradley, you're the station manager. Can you talk about what you've pieced together at this point?
Well, we've had the Houston Police Department out. They were there within 20 minutes, and of course they conducted an initial investigation, and they were unable to turn up any slug or fragments from whatever round was fired into the building. They're in the middle of conducting an investigation still, of course. Around daylight, our chief engineer was out looking around the edge of the property, and out where John had pointed to where he had seen the shot fired from the vehicle moving by. Steve Brightwell, our chief engineer, found a shell casing, so we called HPD back out to the scene, didn't touch the evidence.
Wait a second. Dwayne, you said, so the police didn't find the shell casing, but you did when it got lighted.
Right, yeah, KPFT chief engineer Steve Brightwell found it. We called the police back out, and they took it into evidence, and we've been able to find out that this is a 39 millimeter round that's commonly used in AK-47 assault rifles. So this has kind of ramped up the fear factor, if you will. It's certainly not somebody just driving by in the middle of the night with a BB gun.
So what's your sense of what happened? And did John Orr, who was at the door, Mary's co-producer on the Zydeco show, see any car, see any person?
John noticed that there was a slow-moving vehicle that had gone by earlier, and as he was letting these two folks into the building about 12 feet away from the control room window where the front door was, he noticed this car going by, and he remarked to me later that it was moving slower than you would go through a school zone. He estimated about 15 miles an hour maybe. And when it got to the eastern edge of our property is when this shot rang out. The two folks at the door thought it was a backfire, but John knew that it was a gunshot. And so he pulled them into the building real quick and got them behind one of the outer walls as Mary was crawling from the control room into the on-air studio.
Dwayne, do you think this could be politically motivated?
Well, certainly we can't say it's not. There's nothing that's been found yet in terms of who may have done this. KPFT has been, as you pointed out, at a point of controversy in Houston since day one, 37.5 years ago. There were no overt threats to the station. We've received no email or voicemail or letters or anything. No one's claimed responsibility for it, but we do on Sunday evenings prior to Mary's Zydeco Pasolé show at midnight, from about 6 o'clock till midnight, we have some relatively, controversial programming, Afrocentric programming that can sometimes be quite heated. And certainly we know from past experience that the KPFT has been threatened and indeed attacked.
I want to play a longer clip of what happened in October 12th, 1970, the second time the transmitter of KPFT was blown up. The clip also includes commentary from KPFT founder Larry Ley.
11 o'clock Central Time last night, Arlo Guthrie was on record singing Alice's Restaurant. Just as he reached the part where he was shouting, "Kill, kill the Army psychiatrist," our transmitter got killed, blown up by what now appears to be 15 sticks of dynamite.
This is KPFT in Houston, Pacifica Radio. And now, one of my favorite songs, Alice's Restaurant by Arlo Guthrie.
They got a building down in New York City called Whitehall Street where you walk in, you get injected, inspected, detected, infected, neglected, and selected. I went in there one morning to have my physical examination. I got good and drunk the night before. I wanted to be the all-American. I mean, I wanted to feel like the all-American kid. I walked in, I was hung down, brung down, swung down, hung up. I walked in, I sat down, and give me a piece of paper, said, "Kid, see the psychiatrist, room 604. I walked up there, I said, "Shrink, I want to kill."
Okay, how did you determine or how did anybody determine that's what it was?
That's the estimate made by the Houston Arson Squad, which worked the case today with the Harris County Sheriff's Department, the Bomb Squad, and the FBI, which dropped out of this case this afternoon for lack of jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. Curiously enough, the FCC says that we're probably the first radio station in the country to be dynamited off the air, and there's no federal law that covers such a thing.
I see. I thought it was a federal law to
We
interfere
all
with.
assumed that it was,
Yeah.
but they checked the books today and found out that it wasn't.
I see.
assume one will now be written.
I understand there were no injuries in the explosion. Is that
No,
right?
but it was close. Sam Diaz, the volunteer who makes the required daily logging of the meters out at the transmitter, is very punctual. He shows up every night at 11 o'clock. Last night he was 20 minutes late, fortunately for him. Found the smoking rubble of the transmitter, which is located 20 miles south of downtown Houston where the studios are. If he'd been on time, he might have gone up with it. The
Right.
dynamite, or whatever it was very professionally planted, because while it smashed our transmitter and it shacked the smithereens, two nearby shacks and their related transmitters escaped unscathed, as did the transmission tower itself. This
Right,
morning, a local construction company donated planning, materials, and labor to build a highly secure underground bomb-proof bunker to put the next transmitter in.
And that was an excerpt of the radio broadcast just after the station's transmitter was blown up. Dynamite strapped to the base of the transmitter. This was October 1970. Dwayne Bradley, Larry Lee talked about, that was the KPFT general manager then, the FBI saying they wouldn't be involved.